Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Aaron Shack Politics. Today, I have a lot of things I want to discuss with you all. And top of the show, I want to talk about journalist Owen Jones. You know him, he's over in the UK, and one of his tweets here is one of the most important columns I've ever written. We're going to dive into it. He says, if you are complicit in Israel's genocide in word or in deed, then you are complicit in one of the worst crimes of our age. You cannot scrub away what you've done. It's far too late, and you will, in time, face the consequences. And then, of course, this is in response to his article. Suddenly, something is shifting. Israel's apologists have realized that a reckoning is coming. They understand that if they're not going to get away with this abomination, and they are absolutely right. He also says that David Lammy's proposed actions are pathetic, and Israel will rightly judge them as such. What matters here is that the government is beginning to panic, and I'll tell you what that's regarding. What matters here is that the government's beginning to panic, right? Not about Palestinians dying, obviously, for some reason. David Lammy and his colleagues fear that they might actually end up going to jail. Got to hit the like on that. The United Nations has declared that 14,000 babies will die without aid in the next 48 hours. In a rational world, everyone should stop dead. The abomination is at the hands of a Western ally, which the British government continues to arm and support. The threat of mass starvation amongst Palestinian babies has its own horror. It is just the latest atrocity in an endless litany of depraved crimes committed every single day for 591 days. Here is the problem. The British government and media know that Israeli leaders and officials said over and over again that they were going to commit an obscene crime from day one. They know that no crime has been so documented and evidenced as it happened. And of course, here on 23rd of October 2023, I wrote that Israeli leaders, quote, have made no effort to disguise their intentions, and thus they have left their cheerleaders with nowhere to hide, no ignorance to plead. I also wrote, as the calamity of Israel's onslaught against Gaza becomes apparent, those who cheered it on will panic about reputational damage and plead their earlier ignorance. Here's why the British government and media should panic. Last week, Tory MP Edward Lee stood up, declared himself a member of Conservative Friends of Israel for 40 years. He asked, when is genocide not a genocide? And let's listen to this clip.
I've been a member of the Conservative Friends of Israel for over 40 years, longer than anybody here. And Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization that hides people, their own fighters, under hospitals. But it's frankly unacceptable to
no proof of that.
Hospital. It's unacceptable to starve a whole people. Is the minister aware that many friends of Israel worldwide, notwithstanding narrow legal definitions, are asking this moral question: when is genocide not genocide?
Interesting.
Mr. Speaker, I have had in recent weeks a series of very powerful interventions from the benches opposite, and I take them seriously with the weight that they hold, particularly from the Father of the House and my neighbour in Lincolnshire. We will not move towards making determinations from dispatch boxes on questions of legal determination, but that does not mean we will wait, Mr. Speaker. The preliminary judgments of the ICJ and the provisional measures that they set out are important, and we will abide by them.
Another Tory MP, Mark Pritchard, declared, I've supported Israel pretty much at all costs, but today I want to say that I got it wrong. He warned history was liable to conclude we've got it wrong as a country. Oof.
Deputy Speaker, of course Israel is an important security, trade and democratic partner, but that doesn't give it a blank check. The fact is that 13,000 children have been killed, 25,000 have been injured, maimed, wounded, orphaned, some of them. And for many years, I've been in this house 20 years, I have supported Israel pretty much at all costs, quite frankly. But today, I want to say that I got it wrong. And I condemn Israel for what it is doing to the Palestinian people in Gaza and indeed in the West Bank. And I'd like to withdraw my support right now for the actions of Israel, what they are doing right now in Gaza. Of course the hostages should be released. Of course that Israel has a right to exist. Of course the Israeli people, the Jewish people should have the right to live in peace. But so do the Palestinian people. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, that the life of a Palestinian child is as precious as the life of a Jewish child. And this particular moment in time, we've had lots of statements over the last 18 months, this is not only this Parliament's not greatest hour. I'm really concerned that this is a moment in history when people look back where we've got it wrong as a country. Can the minister stand up to our friends and allies in the United States and make a strong stand for humanity? For us being on the right side of history, for having the moral courage to lead, not just to follow the United States, and to make a difference. That's why we're all elected here. Let's stand up for life. Let's stand up for all children, not just Jewish children.
Okay. You know, part of that is sincere and a good move here. But once again, Owen Jones continues. The Economist once published an editorial headlined, "Why Israel Must Fight On." Oof. It now estimates that up to 109,000 Palestinians in Gaza have suffered violent deaths. Indirect deaths are certain to dwarf violent deaths. The scale, think the Cambodian genocide. Fog of War, deaths from traumatic injuries in Gaza 2023 to 2025. 52,615 reported by Gaza authorities. Of course, the estimated range here from low to high is 77,000 to 109,000. The Times newspaper, long a staunch defender of Israel, now publishes opinion pieces decrying closing our eyes to Gaza's horror and pleading enough with Israel. Why are we closing our eyes to Gaza's horror? We have reached the point at which Israel's Western allies must say enough of this savagery and actually mean it. Like every true friend of Israel, I'm obliged to say enough. With each bomb, each bullet, each meal denied to Gaza's children, Hamas is getting more of what it wants. Interesting. The point here is that if even pro-Israel conservative MPs and pro-Israel publications are now accepting the scale of the crime, that points in one direction. Israel's genocide being understood as one of the great crimes of our age. Very true. Very true. Last week, the Tory MP Kit Malthouse asked the Labour Minister what legal advice he'd taken about his legal liability, as well as that of Prime Minister, Foreign Secretary, and other ministers. That was for when the reckoning comes, he said. Let's go back.
It's becoming increasingly difficult to keep up with the slaughter in Gaza, the brutality and cruelty in the West Bank, and starvation as a policy. And the crimes come daily. Crimes such as the recent killing of Mohammed Bardawil, one of only 3 key eyewitnesses to the slaughter of rescue workers just a few weeks ago, their bodies being buried in shallow graves. It's clear to everybody that crimes are being committed daily. Now, as a number of members have pointed out,
but you know,
the UK is a party to international agreements which provide for a positive obligation to act to prevent genocide, torture, to protect the rights of other people. And we have an obligation as a member of the Security Council of the United Nations and as a state party to the Geneva Conventions to promote peace and security. So what advice has the Minister taken as to his own liability in this regard, which will attach to him as a decision maker? And has the government received advice as to whether the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, or indeed any senior officials or previous ministers may be exposed when the reckoning comes?
When the reckoning comes, dude. When are the Nuremberg
trials,
trials,
you would expect,
right?
I wouldn't discuss internal legal advice in this chamber, whether that applies to me or other ministers. of the government, I'd reassure the honourable gentleman that right across the government, we understand the gravity of the situation. We understand the weight that now falls to us to try and ensure changes from a trajectory which is diabolical. We will continue to use our role in the Security Council at the G7 and as part of the E3, as we did yesterday, and that action will not stop.
He's like, all right, sure. For a long time, I doubted whether there would actually be a reckoning, which is, fair enough. Israel's apologists certainly felt that they fell under the umbrella shield of Israeli impunity, reinforced by anti-Palestinian racism. They rightly now understand that is crumbling. If things are shifting this fast right now, what about in a year, or 2 years, or 5 years, or 10 years? Well, history will always remember this in that way, so it really won't matter at a certain point. Those complicit in Israel's genocide will have to bet the house on them getting away with it for the rest of their lives. If I were them, I would be losing a lot of sleep right now. This crime really is too grotesque, too enormous, too shameless, too confessed, too documented to get away with. In media circles, careers will end, politicians going to jail. Not tomorrow, but eventually. What the government is doing now isn't putting meaningful pressure on Israel. It's arse covering. Very true. Ass covering, right? Ministers think they can drive back future legal threats by pointing to tokenistic nonsense that has no actual impact. This is where we're getting into the good stuff, right? I wanted to get to this part, right? So now, Zara Sultana, MP, who Labour has suspended, notes Britain is continuing to arm Israel as it commits unspeakable crimes. David Lammy says this is, quote, clickbait. Your lawyers will not be able to use that as a defense, David Lammy. So let's listen.
Between October and December 2024, the government approved over £127 million in export licenses to Israel, exceeding the combined total under the Tories for 2020 to 2023. These licenses, granted after the government's so-called temporary suspension, include components for lethal F-35 fighter jets. Jets Israel is now flying at 5 times the usual rate, decimating Gaza. Children are starving, families have been wiped out, hospitals destroyed. Yet the government in court claims that there is no evidence Israel targets civilians. The Foreign Secretary is personally responsible and refuses to ban all arms sales to this genocidal state. So, like many across Britain, I have to ask the Foreign Secretary, how do you sleep at night?
Oh.
Well, the Honourable Lady has raised figures that I don't recognise. She's raised once
just
again.
Because you're ignorant, ignorance doesn't absolve you of any criminal negligence or anything like that.
Sales to Israel. I banned arms sales that could be used in Gaza.
You didn't.
I know that the Honourable Lady is keen on clickbait, but I'm not going to be baited from this dispatch box.
It's not going to work, brother. That is not going to hang. That's not going to work. All right, so as we get to the end of the thread here, Owen Jones says, let's conclude with the words of Israeli writer Iris Leal. One day she says, everyone who didn't report on this catastrophe or stayed silent or actively or indifferently supported it will be consumed with total shame. There you go. Shame is not enough. Those who facilitated one of the worst crimes in our age have no excuses. Everything they say or do now will be driven by self-preservation, not morality or humanity. Time's running up, David Lammy. You are going to jail. Okay, so what I want to say further on this issue is that basically what's going on with what is happening in Gaza, what is happening even with Tesla, Target, all these other organizations that are under boycotts or increased pressure, sanctions, various things of this sort. These companies and people and politicians are not reacting to what's happening in Gaza or DEI or any of these various things that have, or Elon Musk being a Nazi, causing Tesla to completely sink. They're not reacting to the atrocity or the moral wrongdoing of this issue. They are reacting to the financial or legal ramifications to themselves. So Tesla isn't all of a sudden, by getting rid of Elon Musk, they're not all of a sudden realizing like, oh, our practices were bad or supporting Elon Musk was wrong. They were like, oh, this was a financial net negative. Let's try to correct. And they should be eternally punished for not realizing the moral wrongdoing. And the same with the politicians. Anyone that is not on the side of the Palestinians is in a clear moral wrong. Whether you're a politician, it doesn't matter what you are, but that you supported this, it doesn't all of a sudden absolve you of all your guilt and wrongdoing to just because it's not cool and popular anymore to support Israel, or just because you might face some sort of reprehensible consequences for your decisions. It doesn't all of a sudden make you the good guy for switching sides. And we're all going to recognize you for that, and history will ultimately point to that wrongdoing. And that's where we stand. So, getting to some further topics here in the show. Owen Jones mentioned that he had an article here. And gonna read through it here for you all. All right, so Owen Jones has an article here, and it says, "A moment of judgment has come at last, not just for Netanyahu, but for his enablers," by Owen Jones. Israel's renewed assault on Gaza has prompted international condemnation, but many of those critics will face their own reckoning. Suddenly, something is shifting, and this is as of May 20th, 2025. He says, last week, a stunning parliamentary intervention was delivered by the Tory backbencher Kit Malthouse in a question to Hamish Falconer, Labour's Middle East minister. He noted that it's becoming increasingly difficult to keep up with the slaughter in Gaza, unquote. Adding that, quote, crimes come daily, unquote. Given Britain was signatory to various conventions imposing a, quote, positive obligation to act to prevent genocide, unquote, and other crimes, Malthouse asked what advice the government had taken as to the liability of the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, Falconer himself, and previous ministers when the reckoning comes. The idea of a reckoning is clearly playing on the minds of Western politicians, perhaps is even keeping them up at night. This week, Britain joined France and Canada in denouncing the suffering in Gaza as intolerable, threatening an unspecified, concrete response if Israel's current onslaught into the Gaza Strip continues. Speaking in the Commons today, the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, announced the UK was suspending trade talks with Israel, summoning its ambassador to the UK and imposing sanctions on a few extremist settlers. Now, this is not enough, but, let's continue. The world is judging. History will judge them, unquote. He said in reference to Benjamin Netanyahu's government. Lammy is right. But the problem for him is that this judgment will extend far beyond the direct perpetrators. It will also include Israel's enablers. The Foreign Secretary might have announced his measures with great pomp and gravity, but they amounted to tokenistic nonsense. Even David Cameron tried to go further a year ago when he was foreign secretary, before abandoning plans to directly sanction two senior Israeli government ministers, the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, and the national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, with the International Criminal Court having issued arrest warrants against the Israeli leadership 6 months ago. Panic is clearly breaking out in government, and yet it is still not doing all it can to stop Israel. Just last week, the UK was in court defending Britain's continued export of F-35 fighter jet parts that end up in Israel. This is about much more than just a failure to act now. It is about what led us to this moment. Keir Starmer, you see, once agreed that it was appropriate for Israel to impose a siege on Gaza, cutting off power and water. I think that Israel does have that right. It is an ongoing situation, he added. Obviously, everything should be done within international law. He later claimed to have said no such thing. It's ridiculous. Despite having said it. He then presided over an exodus of disgusted, predominantly Muslim counselors. An advisor briefed that this was labor shaking off the fleas and took disciplinary action against pro-Palestine MPs. His government has suspended just 8% of arms deals to Israel under immense legal pressure and approved more military equipment in the 3 months that followed than had been approved by the Tories in the 3 years between 2020 and 2023. Nothing the government now does can scrub these facts from the coming reckoning. Another Tory MP, Edward Lee, stood up last week declaring himself a member of Conservative Friends of Israel, quote, for over 40 years, longer than anyone here. His question was direct. When is genocide not genocide? He has been joined by his Tory colleague, Mark Pritchard, who noted that he had backed Israel for 20 years, pretty much at all costs, quite frankly, unquote. Withdrawing that support, he too alluded to the coming reckoning, quote, I'm really concerned that this moment in history when people look back where we've got it wrong as a country, unquote. The scale of that reckoning must be proportionate to the scale of the crime. A month into Israel's onslaught, after which at least 5,139 civilians have been killed, and of course that number is grossly undercounted. According to the conservative baseline figures by the NGO Air Wars, The Economist published an editorial headlined, Why Israel Must Fight On, a more recent offering, long after the territory has been essentially wiped from the earth, is titled The War in Gaza Must End. Or look at Rupert Murdoch's Times. Usually a reliable supporter of Israel, it now runs opinion pieces asking why we are, quote, closing our eyes to Gaza's horror, unquote. A truth is dawning that this will be remembered as one of history's great crimes. Right now, the UN warns that 14,000 babies could perish in the next 48 hours without aid. The Israeli opposition leader and former General Yair Golan, who later this year declared, quote, we'd all like to wake up one spring morning and find that 7 million Palestinians who live between the sea and the river have simply disappeared, unquote. Now declares his country is, quote, killing babies as a hobby, unquote. Still, Israel acts with impunity, having imposed a total siege since the beginning of March. Netanyahu yesterday declared, quote, minimal humanitarian aid, quote, will be allowed in. Why? Not to alleviate Palestinian suffering, but because even zealous pro-Israel politicians, quote, have warned that they cannot support us if images of mass starvation emerge, unquote. A pinprick, in other words, for cosmetic purposes. Meanwhile, Smotrich declares, quote, we are disassembling Gaza and leaving it as piles of rubble, with total destruction which has no precedent globally, and the world isn't stopping us, unquote. Zvi Sukkot, a parliamentarian in Smotrich's party, boasts, quote, everyone got used to the idea that you can kill 100 Gazans in one night. and nobody in the world cares, unquote. In the 24th of October 2023, I wrote a column on these pages with the headline, Israel is clear about its intentions in Gaza. World leaders cannot plead ignorance of what is coming, unquote. Why? Because Israel's leaders and officials made devastatingly clear what they would do from day one. Quote, as the calamity of Israel's onslaught against Gaza becomes apparent, those who cheered it on will panic about reputational damage and plead their earlier ignorance. I wrote, do not let them get away with it this time. As the people of Gaza now prepare for the worst, being right has never felt so bitter. But it took no special insight or powers of prophecy, for here was a catastrophe foretold from the start. And this is once again from Owen Jones, and this has been published in The Guardian, May 20th, 2025. So we want to thank Owen Jones for his continued coverage and for speaking out for the Palestinian people. This is not something they necessarily had to do. Now next, I want to pull up a news story, and I will let TikToker Ash Bay take it away for us. All right.
So a series of anti-Semitic attacks occurred this week earlier in Texas, in which places of worship were vandalized.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, they were mosques. And since it was an attack against Muslims, you probably didn't hear about this on the news.
Not at all.
It's been reported that multiple Stars of David were spray painted on mosques and Islamic community centers in Austin, Texas, the night of May 22nd. This coordinated attack of vandalism occurred at the Nueces Mosque, the Islamic Ahlul Bayt Association, and the Austin Dianet Center, with each place of worship being defaced in multiple areas with this Judaic symbol. They tagged billboards, gates, entryways. They even tagged the imam's office. Everything about this is Islamophobia meant to instill some level of fear in the worshippers of these mosques. These are targeted attacks. They are hate crimes.
Yep.
Even if the media doesn't report on it. Even if the media tries to minimize it. The Council on American Islamic Relations office in Austin noted that these attacks fit a very disturbing pattern of Islamophobic incidents against mosques in the city, with Nueces Mosque actually being hit with 4 separate hate crime-related incidents since October. This is the very blatant Islamophobia that they are trying to say is not on the rise in the U.S. right now.
Indeed. Now, I also want to bring up this. You won't see this on mainstream media. A Zionist was captured vandalizing the Nueces Mosque in Austin, Texas, spray painting multiple Stars of David on its entrance on May 22nd. And of course, I want to try to full screen this for you. And I've said this many times before, but the Star of David is indeed the new swastika. It has been weaponized. And you don't just see this in America in Islamophobic attacks. You know, you see this all throughout Palestine, all throughout Israel. They tag various locations in this very same way to instill, like, hey, we're taking your land, we're stealing it, you don't belong here. And it's the same thing. It's the same reason we see satanic stars put up on Catholic churches, Nazi swastikas on Jewish synagogues. Like, it's all over the place. But the difference here is that this is Zionists that are coming out here and weaponizing the Star of David and destroying the symbol that it stands for and using it as a modern-day swastika. And so, yes, despite it being a Star of David, this still makes it a hate crime. It's disturbing. All right, so I want to bring up a clip here. And this is a clip of Joe Rogan sitting down with a very popular comedian, and they're discussing Israel and Palestine. And we make sure that we have that for you. All right.
When you look at what happened in Gaza and you think about the tensions that existed before October 7th, and then this happens, and then the Israeli attack happens, like, how does anything come to a peaceful resolution at this point?
You got to finally give these Palestinians a state. You've been occupying them since 1967. You got to finally take your boot off their neck.
Okay. Just got to correct that. The occupation was not since 1967. He might just be talking about, like, Gaza or something, but, like, this has been going on since 1948. One could argue that it stretches back even further.
Why would some Palestinian who's, let's say there's an Israeli who kicks him out of his house that his grandfather built, that his family's been living in for 100 years, and now that Israeli guy is living in his house, and you're watching from like a refugee camp, this guy live in your house, and as Daryl says in the series, he goes, now you have no means by which to give that house back to your grandmother, but you could burn that house to the fucking ground. And like, it's easy to look there and go, but why would you do that? That's irrational. It's like, no, not really. It's really not. Because it's picking the wrench. It's going, because you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Okay, so what I would say about that is, like, why would you burn it to the ground? Well, that is what resistance does, you know? So I don't really applaud Joe Rogan, but I do, and I don't, like, support him in many ways, but when he sits down and learns about things and has good conversations, but I feel like that's a good thing, but it doesn't necessarily get into his brain, but he does sort of play the dummy, whether he is dumb or not, up to you know, an IQ test or whatever. But at least he asks those questions like he is dumb, you know? He's able to ask those questions in order to learn, not that he actually learns. So, an interesting way to articulate the situation, I would say. So, moving on, I'd like to let you all know that, of course, we are on Substack. You can go to aaronshackpolitics.substack.com, and, of course, you can see all of our videos, articles published by myself. Go over there, give us a follow, because also another thing that I can do is sort of repost what myself and other journalists are able to cover on all these issues. And so if I'm not able to, like, cover certain things as rapidly as, you know, we might want on the show here, because I'm a one-man operation, one-man editorial team, you know, one-man editor, producer, cameraman, lighting, like the whole deal. You know, follow our social media so that you can keep up more accurately and quickly in the time that I'm not able to publish videos. Also, Twitter. You can go to twitter.com/ashackpolitics, and you can follow me over there. You will see a lot of things on Twitter that necessarily I wouldn't be able to show on, say, YouTube or TikTok and other platforms. So I'm just going to mention that there. Also, you can find us on Blue Sky at aaronshackpolitics.bsky.social. So please follow us on all these places. You can also find me on TikTok at aaronshackpolitics. And of course, we're going to be doing live streams over there, and I want to do interviews and have conversations there. And of course, if you've been following, I've been a guest on many panels, including Santana Jones. I've been over on Lal's stream. I've been on several places. But I've wanted to be able to help with various other creators that are donating to Palestine. They're having conversations about this, and I want to share that with you because I think that's a great way for all of us, including you, the viewer, to be able to learn about these issues. Okay? So just that quick break as we continue on with the show. Of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, TikTok, wherever you are, make sure that you are following on YouTube. You can go to youtube.com/AaronShackPolitics. And of course, you can find all of our videos here. You can find our live streams, popular videos, YouTube shorts, Those are usually kind of the videos that blow up, are short clips from the show, which really take me a lot of effort to like cut out those clips, edit them in that format, and push them out in a timely manner, as well as just doing these longer recordings of the show. But also, I like to sort things by the various major issues, and so eventually over time I want to make sure that we tackle each of these issues. And so if you're looking for particular videos I've done on healthcare or on Palestine, you could just hit that playlist and watch along and listen in the background. And then, of course, I've also categorized videos by political figures. So I've tried to make sure, like, hey, if I've covered a story on AOC or Joe Biden or Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders or whatever, that I make sure that they go into these playlists as well. And then, of course, we have the TikToks series, where these are videos that I've done on TikTok, and I've tried to make sure to bring them over to YouTube so that, despite whatever platform you're listening on, you're not missing out, right? And of course, we have our live streams, and then I try to recommend other content creators that are also active on the platform. So I want to thank you all for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit that like button. Ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. It would be a real shame. All right, so Prem Thacker has an article on Zeteo. Once again, this is an article by Prem Thacker. Scoop: Trump admin forcing schools to report international students for protest activity or, quote, anti-Semitic actions. Now, we know that that's not true, that simply supporting Palestine does not make you anti-Semitic, okay? The State Department is directing university officers to report international students and scholars or participating in certain campus protests, prescribed anti-Semitic actions, terrorist activity, or endorsing or espousing terrorism, according to emails seen by Zeteo. Now, once again, this is very much in the lines of, the SS, the Gestapo, back during the times of the Nazis. This is definitely the suppression of political and free speech that is reminiscent of, say, the 1940s, right? So, new policies will impact the J visa program, which includes people participating in academic or work-related exchange programs in the U.S. There had already been an array of things that university officers were directed to report, including fraud and incidents of abuse or those involving child protective services. But the State Department is adding 3 new reportable incidents that direct schools to determine what qualifies as anti-Semitic or terrorist-endorsing behavior that merits reporting. So, one university officer told Zeteo they think the government is nudging school officials to be the bad guys and give more reasons/excuses to terminate student visa records. They added that these requirements may give the government another excuse to take away a school's ability to sponsor visas. In the emails seen by Zeteo, the State Department includes several examples of the 3 new reportable incidents directly quoted. Prescribed anti-Semitic actions, physical actions directed towards Jewish individuals and or their property, community, institutions, or religious facilities that violates the law or university rules. Serious violations of university conduct rules, participation in a building occupation, participation in unauthorized encampment, disrupting classes, intimidation, harassment, and assault. Terrorist activity, endorsing or espousing terrorism, engaging in terrorist activity, membership in a terrorist organization, endorsing or espousing terrorist activity. Of course, what they deem is terrorist is what is interesting here. Could just be waving a Palestinian flag, waving a keffiyeh, occupying a building in protest, or being in a field or in a park or any sort of, courtyard, whatever it may be. The State Department and Office of Private Sector Exchange Programs Administration, Academic and Government Section, where the directive came from, did not immediately respond for a request for comment. So I'll let you read the rest of the article, but it is very interesting. what it gets into. And make sure that you subscribe to Zateo. If you upgrade to their paid membership, you'll be able to read into more of their articles. So, next, I wanted to dip into this. This is the Israeli army. Israeli army admits civilians make up 80% of those killed in Gaza since March. This is as of May 14th, 2025. So I want to get into this a little bit. They have noted that 80% of the people killed in the attacks on Gaza since Israel breached the ceasefire 2 months ago are uninvolved civilians. In response to a request from the Hebrew magazine Hamakom, I guess, the office of the Israeli military spokesperson stated that 500 of the 2,780 killed in the Gaza Strip as of Tuesday are, quote, terrorists. In contrast, the remaining 2,280 people killed by Israeli forces were, quote, not suspected terrorists, unquote. The data shows that approximately 4.5 civilians were killed for every Palestinian resistance fighter supposedly killed by the Israeli forces. For comparison, the ratio of combatants to civilians killed in the Russia-Ukraine war is 1 to 2.8, while the ratio during the U.S. war against ISIS in Syria was 1 to 2.5. Hamakom wrote that the total number of deaths in Gaza was taken from data compiled by the Palestinian Ministry of Health, whose figures were found credible by the Israeli military itself. Interesting. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has claimed that the ratio is just 1 civilian killed for each combatant killed. So once again, trying to revise statistics from a political platform. So, however, many estimates of the death toll in the Strip are much higher than the number documented by the health ministry. According to the Euromed monitor, for every Palestinian resistance fighter killed, 14 civilians have been killed, many of them women and children. Even in comparison to previous campaigns waged by Israel, including those in the Gaza Strip, it appears that the ratio of civilians to combatants killed has soared in the current war. For example, in Israel's Operation Protective Edge in 2014, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs estimated that for every Hamas fighter killed, about 3 non-involved people were killed. So once again, quite disturbing. Since the start of the war, Israeli forces have killed at least 52,908 people and wounded 119,721, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Thousands more are missing and presumed to be dead, buried under the rubble of buildings destroyed by Israeli strikes. So there's even more civilian death than we can even document because we're not able to go in there and do so because of the relentless bombing that never stops. Since the 18th of March, when Israel breached the ceasefire agreement and resumed its bombing of the enclave, at least 2,780 have been killed and at least 7,680 have been injured. Now, I want to bring up this next article, once again from Prem Thacker. New video of Mahmoud Khalil's arrest shows Trump administration is lying in court. The new footage of ICE's warrantless arrest shows the Palestinian student fully cooperated with federal agents and was not a flight risk, as the government continues to falsely claim. So once again, this is from Zateo. I'll just show you a little bit of the video footage here. But essentially, he's on the phone with his lawyer, wife, whatever he's communicating with. And of course, the agents have been blurred out. According to Khalil's legal team, immigration authorities wrote in their arrest warrant report that agents told Khalil they had a warrant for his arrest. But the Trump-Vance administration admitted last month that there was no warrant, claiming it didn't need one to arrest the Colombia pro-Palestine and anti-war protest leader because, quote, it was likely he would escape before they could obtain a warrant, unquote. The government claimed Khalil was not cooperating and was going to flee. The, quote, exigent circumstances, unquote, it claimed amounted to Khalil being a, quote, flight risk, unquote. But the new footage of Khalil's abduction, along with a previously published video showing the moment plainclothes agents handcuffed him, reveals the government's claims were a lie. The new footage released after Khalil's legal team subpoenaed Columbia University clearly shows Khalil speaking on the phone before handing the phone to the agents seeking to detain him. Khalil was talking to his attorney, according to his legal team, which also said Khalil asked to see a warrant. At some points in the video, which didn't include audio, Khalil appears to be casually chatting with the agents who seem to express no fear of him fleeing. Khalil has no handcuffs on for at least 5 minutes. And I just want to sort of like skip through the video so you can see various points where, you know, the agents clearly have him surrounded. He's talking on the phone. There's no reaching for a weapon. There's no running away. There's no fighting. There's no wrestling him to the ground or anything like that. He willingly goes. And there you have it. That's sort of the last seconds of the video before it starts to repeat there. And so you can continue reading the article, which dives into, Ozturk being released. Ramesa, she was released by a federal court in Vermont earlier this month. Columbia student Mohsen Madawi and Georgetown scholar Badar Khansuri have also been released, yet Khalil remains in a Louisiana ICE detention facility. Now, I want to also pull from Owen Jones. Owen Jones says here on Twitter, I watched my dad die from advanced prostate cancer, but then my dad didn't arm a genocide and facilitate the total destruction of a healthcare system, condemning other cancer patients to death. Joe Biden is a monster. He should be treated by medics while he's in prison. Now, why is Owen Jones saying this? Well, recently it was revealed that Joe Biden has some sort of advanced prostate cancer. They haven't really revealed, like, when that diagnosis happened. Like, was it during his presidency? Was it something they knew about, like his mental state becoming worse and worse throughout the presidency? Owen Jones says, I'm skeptical that Biden's aides covered up advanced prostate cancer. Prostate cancer alone is one of the more survivable cancers, but it can be missed, as it was with my dad, leading to a more advanced lethal form. They obviously covered up his mental decline, though, and I agree with that. Now, it's fair to say that I don't wish prostate cancer or any cancer on anyone or my enemies. It is a brutal and debilitating and terrible thing, but it doesn't pull away from the fact that Joe Biden destroyed cancer hospitals in Gaza by directly arming Israel and continuing to send the 2,000-pound bunker busters that we've talked about on the channel. Okay? And using those to bomb hospitals, schools, churches, etc. Right? So I do believe that Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the administration, they are just as complicit as everyone in the Israeli administration and even people in the UK and other countries throughout the world. I believe they should all be tried for war crimes. And if that means Joe Biden has to sit in a jail cell for the rest of his life while he's treated for cancer, it doesn't matter that he bought the 100 Years' War book, during Thanksgiving in the last few days of his term as president. None of that matters. It's too little too late, And any statement saying, oh, I condemn this, I condemn that, or, oh, I was actively working towards a ceasefire, when it's been literally proven that he was never Not once was his administration moving towards a ceasefire, or not once did they even make a statement condemning so. And we also know that Kamala Harris is very much on the same page, and we wouldn't have gotten a ceasefire or any sort of movement pro-Palestinian under her leadership. And she would have won the presidency had she done so. So, it's wrong, but, you know, it is what it is. It's karma. Karma comes around awful quick sometimes. And that's just the way it is. Now, we have a few more things to discuss today. Obviously, the UK has suspended trade negotiations with Israel over Gaza aid blockade and has leveled new sanctions targeting West Bank settlements. Of course, Foreign Secretary informed Parliament that the UK has suspended trade negotiations with Israel due to its blockade of Gaza. David Lammy stated that the Israeli ambassador has been summoned. Now, we can look at a clip here. I'm going to bring it up for you. UK suspends free trade talks with Israel and announces sanctions over West Bank settlers.
Therefore, today, I'm announcing that we have suspended negotiations with this Israeli government on a new free trade agreement. We will be reviewing cooperation with them under the 2030 bilateral roadmap. The Netanyahu's government's actions have made this necessary, Madam Deputy Speaker. Today, my honourable friend, the Minister for the Middle East, is summoning the Israeli ambassador to the Foreign Office to convey this message. I say now to the people of Israel, I want a strong friendship with you based on shared values, with flourishing ties between our people and societies.
There are no shared values.
We are unwavering in our commitment to your security and to your future, to countering the very real threat from
They're an
Iran,
apartheid state
scourge of
committing a
terrorism,
modern-day
and the evils of
Holocaust.
anti-Semitism. But the conduct of the war in Gaza is damaging our relationship with your government. Despite the glimmer of hope from January's ceasefire, the suffering from this conflict has worsened. But January showed another path was possible. We urge Netanyahu's government to choose this path. The world is judging. History will judge them. Blocking aid.
They're only worried about that now.
Dismissing the concerns of your friends and partners. This is indefensible, and it must stop. I commend this statement to the House.
Interesting.
Therefore, today, I'm announcing that we...
So, moving on, the UK has suspended those free trade talks. Pressure from close allies mounting on Israel following a nearly 3-month blockade of supplies into Gaza that led to famine warnings. Even the United States, a staunch ally, has voiced concerns over the hunger crisis. Lammy's words were welcomed by some in the House of Commons. Others called for stronger action, suggesting economic sanctions against Israel and recognizing the state of Palestine. A handful of members shouted for him to call Israel's actions genocide, though Lammy labeled it extremism and monstrous. Still others criticized the joint statement, saying it favored Hamas. Opposing the expansion war has killed thousands of children is not rewarding Hamas, Lammy said. The UK announcement followed comments by British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who called the children suffering in Gaza utterly intolerable and repeated his call for a ceasefire. I want to put on record today that we're horrified by the escalation from Israel, Starmer said, but it's always been this way. This has been continuous, obviously since October 7th, 2023, this has just been a consistent barrage. So the fact that you're only outraged now shows that it's just starting to impact you personally. You're only worried about it now because you believe that there are personal consequences coming your way. I was searching for a bigger word. And that's what I get for doing so sometimes, yeah. So once again, the US, France, EU, and UK, Canada have previously hit Israeli settlers and settler groups with sanctions for their involvement in violence against Palestinians and illegal development in the West Bank. The measures exposed the sanctioned people and groups to asset freezes, travel, and visa bans. The AP previously reported that these measures have had minimal impact as a deterrent. Settler attacks causing injury or death to Palestinians have surged since the Hamas attack in 2023. Israel says it opposes settler violence and blames it on an extremist fringe. Palestinians say that the Israeli army does little to protect them and that the attacks are part of a systematic attempt to expel them from their land. So, very interesting. Hopefully this brings more substantial change, but really what it is just people covering their own ass, to be fair, to be completely fair here. So, once again, I'd like to thank you all for watching Aaron Shack Politics. Thank you for your continued support. It is much appreciated. And listen, I just wanted to make a note here. It's been a little while since our last episode. I kind of like some family emergencies come up, and I posted in what used to be like the community feed, but now it's called the post feed. I posted there that, you know, there wouldn't be any videos for a while, and I've just been trying to share things on TikTok and be in panels when I can, but it was kind of touch and go. So we had some family emergencies. All that's cleared up. Everyone's safe, happy, and healthy. But yeah, I just wanted to also point out that, you know, if you don't see videos for a little while, it's just because, once again, I'm a one-man team running this entire thing. And I'm also doing this while running multiple channels and, you know, having to clip, you know, maybe 15, 20 clips from any one episode and cut them down to where they're like 3-minute long shorts and post them on all socials, and then having them like banned or restricted on TikTok or getting strikes or violations or having to remove videos or having to edit titles or descriptions of videos in order for them to post and get pushed out to the For You page and stuff like that. It takes up a lot of my time, and it's like really frustrating, and it keeps me from being able to keep up with some of the latest issues. And so I'm trying to work on ways to make that better. And you know, I can't really afford to like pay an editor or anything like that, because it's a, you know, if the channel's not generating revenue, you know, and I do this out of passion. I don't do it for money. If I did make any money from this channel as a YouTube partner, I would definitely push it to pro-Palestine efforts and try to get food and water on the ground in Gaza and anywhere else it is needed. So just wanted to make that known, and just know that I'm always going to continue to talk about what's happening in Palestine, not just because I'm Palestinian, but because it's the right thing to do. So once again, I want to thank you all for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, ring that notification bell, and as I pointed out earlier, make sure, okay, make sure you head over, follow us on the Substack, keep up with that, keep up with us on Twitter, keep up with us on Blue Sky, YouTube, and TikTok, okay? Those are our platforms. You can find us there, Aaron Shack Politics. Once again, I want to thank you for watching. Take care. Be safe, and until the next one.